All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WorkSmart Audience Development and Community Engagement Workshop. My name is Danielle Stobie with ArtsFairfax, and I will be moderating today's workshop. Please make sure to check in the left-hand corner that you're both muted and that your video is off. We will have time to type questions in the chat box. And when you do that, please put your organization with the question. I will be monitoring the questions and designate time to answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. I've also put in the chat that if you're having any technical difficulties, you can email our Information and Technology Manager, Karan, at kbansal@artsfairfax.org with your phone number. So I'd like to start things off by introducing our speaker, Annalisa Dietmar. Annalisa presents nationally on nonprofit integrated marketing and communications between best practices. We are excited to have her speak on this topic, especially during these times. So take it away, Annalisa.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us today for what was meant to be an engaging in-person convenience. I hope that you are all well, you're healthy, and you're hunkering down comfortably, ready for what I hope will be an informative hour or so of cost-effective tips and tricks to develop your ideal audience and create a culture of brand ambassadors, no matter your team nor marketing budget size. So if you have the time now to get ahead, start on strategic planning for your organization once the dust settles a bit, you'll come away from our time together with actionable steps to not only retain your current audience, but expand it. So throughout this presentation, I'll ask questions and you can respond using the chat boxes, and Danielle will be able to report out to the group your responses. I also encourage you to tweet out your responses, and please make sure to tag myself and ArtsFairfax using hashtag ArtsFairfax so that we can continue the conversation online once our time together today concludes. So firstly, let's review today's agenda. I like to think of audience development in 3 acts: audience acquisition, audience retention, and converting patrons to brand ambassadors. The goals for today are to build brand awareness with limited resources, learn how to recognize, target, and retain your audience, turn transactions into transformative experiences, and cultivate a culture of brand ambassadors. So let's start at the beginning. What is audience development? I found 2 quotes that I thought were actually quite perfect. This is from the Arts Council of England. And the term audience development describes activity which is undertaken specifically to meet the needs of existing and potential audiences and to develop ongoing relationships with audiences. That certainly can include aspects of marketing, commissioning, programming, education, and distribution. And from Opera America, the goals of audience development are increasing awareness of and participation in the activities of a company, which include but are not limited to attendance at performances. This is really important. This involvement can and should manifest itself in ways that extend beyond ticket sales to participation in the company's leadership, volunteer corps, and donor groups, or voicing support for the company and its value in the community. So who is involved in the audience development process? And the answer is a resounding everyone. How do you engage colleagues and artists in the audience development process? This can be done in a number of ways, including an audience profile survey. You can poll staff for this. Visitor satisfaction surveys, which is a survey for patrons. You can have a focus group led by an independent moderator. A SWOT analysis, which I'm sure is a familiar term, and we'll review this exercise in a bit. And I believe that integrating marketing and communications is essential for cohesive branding and messaging. I have found that a strong collaboration between marketing and development teams is vital to the health and stability of an arts organization. So at Imagination Stage, where I was previously employed, it's a premier arts and arts education nonprofit in Maryland. We had what was called an institutional development team. And this consisted of both the marketing and development teams working together daily, meeting as one team monthly, all working to collaboratively achieve success. Neither team was siloed, which resulted in numerous record-setting achievements for the organization. Also implemented at Imagination Stage is the season selection committee. So essentially, once the artistic team narrows down their top choices for the year, members of the marketing, development, education, and artistic teams meet several times to further narrow down the season selection. Each member reads the plays and brings to the table their thoughts on if and how the play would contribute toward a successful season. Having each department's voice heard and considered in the season selection process allows everyone to feel a sense of responsibility to achieve success and a sense of partnership with one another. So an institutional development team and season selection committee, novel as they may seem, are innovative ways to engage everyone in your organization to participate in audience development. So what are the benefits of audience development? They include an increased authentic communication, relationship building, increased number of returning patrons, and an increased number of new patrons, and an expanded audience. So this next section is meant to be a review of internal MarCom. When I say MarCom, I'm referring to marketing and communications, best practices, which can then be optimized with a paid digital strategy. So these recommendations ensure that first step bases are covered to enhance your already existing strategy to both acquire and retain patrons. So you'll first want to conduct a marketing audit to determine what's working well, what could be enhanced, where you'd like to be, and how you're going to get there. So then following completion of the marketing audit, you create your visual brand and you lead a SWOT analysis exercise. So SWOT, I'm sure you're familiar with this. It's essentially you evaluate the internal strengths and weaknesses of your organizations, as well as the external opportunities and threats. So now you create your visual brand. And if it's already created, if it's already established, reevaluate it. And perhaps everything's working swimmingly, but perhaps there are some things, some aspects of your brand that could be refreshed. So this is kind of a fun tool. You can use Moat to see how your creative stacks up against others. What can you learn from the advertisements of similar organizations? So as you see here, this is actually Imagination Stage, advertising, digital advertising. You can pull up anybody and just, it could be your perceived competitor, for instance, or another arts organization that you think is advertising well. You can type in their name and then see what types of creative assets they are producing in real time. Another fun tool to create your visual brand or refresh it, as I mentioned, is Canva. And I'm not sure how many of you are already incorporating this into your marketing, but it is an awesome user-friendly tool in which you can drag and drop graphics and text into either existing templates or you can customize your own. And this is a free tool, but a paid account does include the incorporation of your own brand, colors, etc. And I actually currently use Canva to design all marketing materials and social media graphics where I currently work. So I always have two team mottos, no matter where I am, and this is the first. Be as proactive as possible to be as reactive as possible. In other words, as much as we plan, there will always be surprises. So the more we plan in advance, the more you'll be able to think on your feet and remain in control of your outreach efforts. An integrated marketing and communications approach streamlines efforts to ensure that your audience does not become oversaturated. So The Matrix is not just a nod to one of my favorite movies from the 90s, but it's also known as a campaign calendar. It's a simple, free tool you can use to align your team and your outreach efforts. So this is an example of a very simple Outlook calendar that I've used with my team. And there are certainly more sophisticated ways to track campaigns, but again, in Outlook or Google Calendar, they're budget-friendly ways to monitor marketing communications and even development outreach. So you can have a marketing team and development share the same calendar so that you're not inundating your audiences with similar messaging over and over again. So you simply develop a key and note the specific outreach, and then you assign colors to team members responsible for the communications. So as you can see, let's see, look where it says 11 and it has PR, that is public release. And then if you look further down, the blue that says DC, that means a donor communication. So that's specifically tailored to donors only. Another way to acquire new audiences is the incorporation of video into your strategy. Adding a video to a landing page makes it 53% more likely to appear on the first page of Google results. Close to 40% of consumers say that video increases the chance they will make a purchase on a mobile device. Some budget-friendly ideas include sneak peeks into the artistic process, a day in the life montage of your staff, your volunteers, your executive director, etc., a live customer care from your box office team. And now, if you wouldn't mind, if you can just type in a couple of things that have worked for you in the chat box, we'll take just a moment, and I would ask Danielle to report out to the group. You can also tweet out what has worked for you using hashtag ArtsFairfax. I'm just going to take a moment, and if you wouldn't mind submitting your ideas, that'd be great. Okay, Danielle, if we have any to share, that'd be awesome. Otherwise, we can look for the answers on social media later.
Yeah, so I don't see anything in the chat quite yet. So
fair enough.
Yep.
We'll move on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to talk about audience diversification strategies. And this may go without saying, but boosted Facebook posts for arts organizations and sponsored ads should be incorporated into your strategy as well. So you would start off with a modest budget to see the impact your boosted posts and sponsored ads have, and then build from there. So you can keep track of analytics so that you can build increased advertising dollars into your budget for the following year, proving the results. This has been very, very helpful to prove ROI on your advertising efforts. You can also target audiences based on demographics, and that would be age, gender, race, location, etc. And psychographics, which include attitudes, personalities, values, interests, and lifestyles. You can segment audiences in your direct mail efforts, email marketing, and social media. Craft different messages and call to actions, personalizing the interactions. You can take advantage of existing content, and you can repurpose blog posts into videos, for example. You can even host a webinar, and by now most everyone has heard of and used Zoom, whether it be for conference calls or all those happy hours that you've all been having recently with your friends and colleagues to simply reconnect. Consider producing a podcast in which you interview your organization's leadership, artists, loyal patrons, and more. So remember, not everyone consumes your marketing the same. The key is to repurpose your content across several different communication vehicles to broaden your reach on a regular basis. So now let's talk about how to actually craft a strategy that works for your organization to expand your audience. I created a simple front and back audience development worksheet that will be provided to you following this presentation. And this is an exercise that will align your team when strategizing. When I say team, it could be your marketing communications team. Perhaps it's just a one-woman show, and I'm actually gonna have an example of that later. So you want to include in your strategy, where are we now? And I'm gonna go quite a bit into detail here, so I'll give you plenty of time to take notes. So this where are we now section should be a detailed section outlining your current audience, who they are, what they want, what they do, and what they need. How many patrons do you have per year? What are their demographics? Their frequency in purchasing tickets? How did patrons hear about your organization? How did they actually arrive to your organization? What is the perceived value for the money spent at your organization? So you can acquire this information with an audience profile survey, a visitor satisfaction survey, focus groups, or a more cost-effective way would be in-person interviews on-site post-shows. You also want to think about, where do we want our organization to be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? So you'll be able to think short-term, medium-term, and long-term impact. So when do you want more patrons? Is there a specific time of the year? What would need to change to increase attendance? What would need to change to increase frequency of visits? Can you increase your sponsorship dollars? Can you afford the marketing expenses required to attract desired new audiences? So especially for nonprofits, there are often more than one barrier. And this is a section to note what the barriers are, and then collectively rank them to determine the prioritization of how to address each of them. So in theory, you could update a new audience development worksheet per each barrier. And then you think about, how are we going to get there? How do we achieve success? Do we need to, for instance, develop new exhibits or special events? Perhaps reevaluate the season selection? And this is where that diverse season selection committee I mentioned earlier would help. Do you need to adjust your pricing structure? Do you need to increase your marketing budget and advertising? What about incorporation of video and podcast into marketing strategy? Or perhaps it's a time for a rebrand, or as I've shared before, a refresh. You could develop a PR strategy to increase media mentions and word of mouth. So now you develop your action plan. You create a schedule of actionable next steps to achieve success. You identify the roles of each team member and how they will contribute toward the plan. You identify the resources required to carry out your plan. And then collectively you determine, how will you define success? Will it be an increased unique visits to the website, referral traffic, your email marketing stats, your word of mouth, increased positive reviews? So going back to the worksheet, just remember, the audience development is an organization-wide commitment, and board support is actually vital. So set an achievable timeline. Your objectives should be SMART, which, just a refresher on that, that is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timelined. And don't let the process of creating your plan outweigh your resources. Keep your strategy at a reasonable length, and that's what this worksheet is intended to do. It should help keep you all focused. So, Shauna DeCruz, I hope that I'm saying your first name right. She is with Blue Hyacinth Mosaics, and she's actually on the call today. She has a fantastic mosaic jewelry business, and she's completed the audience development worksheet for us in advance. So I'm not going to share all of the actions with you, but I do want to highlight many of them. So while not all the questions listed on this worksheet were currently relevant to her one-woman show, the resource did provide a framework for her to plan both short and long term. So she was able to identify where her business currently is, where she wants it to be, the greatest barriers to achieve success, and how she plans to both reach and evaluate her goals. I did want to point out that for her business, her barriers included time management with limited human resources, more dedicated time to practice her art, and the delicate act of balancing personal with professional. And she was able to identify a goal to achieve an increase of 50% in sales over the next few years, an increase in type and quality of art instruction locations, and regular in-studio classes for both children and adults. So thank you very much, Shauna, for your willingness to complete this exercise in advance. And I do look forward to seeing your continued success as you now have your framework in place to expand your business. And I think it's important to share for smaller organizations that this resource is actually helpful. So this could be a one-person exercise, this could be your marketing team exercise, or this could be senior leadership. It really all depends on how many people you want to get involved. So let's review some key concepts from this first half. So you want to conduct a brand audit to determine what's working well, what could be enhanced, and where you'd like to be. Make sure that you streamline integrated marketing and communications efforts with a campaign calendar, and that's the matrix that I referenced earlier. Define, target, and engage your audience to achieve higher impact rates, engagement rates, unique website traffic, and attendance. And create or refresh your visual brand using Canva and additional free tools to clearly communicate your messaging through dynamic, engaging content. And I just want to make sure, does everybody hear me all right?
Annalisa, we actually had a few bits of feedback from your first original question.
Okay, great, please.
So we have things that worked for people. We have rehearsal pictures.
Oh, great, yep.
Someone else said we've used sneak peek videos. Someone else said videos from artistic director and assistant conductor.
Very
And
cool.
then the last one was at Mount Vernon Community Children's Theater. We had success leveraging group outings, school outings, scout nights, etc., to drive show attendance.
That is awesome. I love that these all involve not just, you know, your marketing and communications teams, but leadership and the community as well. So that is spot on. I really appreciate you all sharing those. Thank you. Excellent. So now we're going to move to Act 2, which is audience retention. And we're going to review how to diversify and retain your audience now that you've developed internal strategies to acquire new patrons. So a couple of interesting facts for you. Increasing customer retention rates by 5% increases profits by 25 to 95%. A 2% increase in customer retention has the same effect of decreasing costs by 10%. And on average, loyal customers are worth up to 10 times as much as their first purchase. So why do patrons leave? Why do they stay? Some reasons why patrons leave include uninspired programming, ticket prices are too high, not accessible, there's inconsistent scheduling, and they don't feel engaged. So again, I'm going to pose the question to you, and we'll continue with the presentation, that we'll come back to this. So what else have you experienced as to why patrons leave? Please do tweet out and share with Danielle, and we'll come back to this. And now, why do they stay? They stay because there's a balanced season selection. What I mean by that is there's something for everybody. And of course, you want to really try to balance out those blockbuster shows with the more cutting edge or the more risk-taking, edgy performances. It's just something that you're not sure what you want to try out. Now, when you have those loyal patrons, they're going to come to those performances in addition to the blockbusters. And your ticket prices are affordable, and there's dedication to accessible programming and venue. And there's also consistency within the calendar of events. And there's engagement opportunities. So what else have you experienced? What feedback have you received from your patrons as to why they keep coming back? And again, I'll ask you to include your responses in the chat box. And then I'm going to continue on to my next team motto, which is key. Transformative experiences are greater than transactional experiences. And this means always take the next step to get to know and engage your audience beyond sales. So those quotes that I shared with you in the beginning, there was a lot of mention of extending your outreach and engagement with your patrons beyond sales. It should be throughout the entire customer journey. So part of having a transformative experience is being authentic in your communication. 90% of consumers value honesty about products and services above all other attributes. And 43% of millennials say authenticity is more important than content in everything from news to blogs to advertisements. Danielle, I'd love to go back and see if anybody was able to share the two questions that I had earlier.
Oh, just got someone. Okay, so Shona actually said, I have lost patrons due to poorly advertised art shows or due to too many art shows on the same day within an area. An example, during the build up to the holidays. You are right about patron loyalty. I have many repeat customers.
Awesome. Thank you. First of all, we are confirming it's shown, I believe. So thank you. So that is a great example. Thank you very, very much. Excellent. Any other contributions to that section?
Nope.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
oh, wait. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
We have one more.
Okay, good, good.
So somebody said, what works? Personal connections and word of mouth. People stay because of the relationships they form with us. And this is Olivia Harefield from Piano School of New York.
That is perfect. That is exactly right. So that's an example of having an authentic relationship, a transformative experience. It is all about the relationship building. So thank you. That's a great point. Fantastic. So
I think that's it for now.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to move now into Act 3. We're skipping past the intermission and we're moving right into how to convert patrons to brand ambassadors. So in this final section, we'll explore the concept of creating a culture of brand ambassadors and why it is so important. So what is a brand ambassador? A brand ambassador promotes your organization in a positive manner by providing genuine, credible support and visibility to your brand. And that includes patrons, staff, board members, artists, and more. So why is creating a culture of brand ambassadors vital? And I do say vital because time and time again, when you survey people, they're going to remark that they heard of a product or service through a friend or a family member, somebody that they trust. So brand ambassadors are loyal to your organization. And I've sometimes heard this referred to as the loyalty ripple effect. And you can count on their promotion to be positive and convincing. Creating a culture of brand ambassadors is cost effective. As previously mentioned, word of mouth is the single most impactful and trusted form of marketing. And last but certainly not least, loyal brand ambassadors promote your organization in an authentic manner to attract new audiences, which, as we learned earlier in this presentation, is vital to effective marketing. This is not one of my mottos, but I did come across this and I thought this was completely applicable. Battles aren't won with a single soldier, but with an entire army. So successful cultivation of brand ambassadors from everyone, and again, that includes staff, board, patrons, artists, will not only retain current audiences, but will ultimately drive new ones to you. So how do you achieve this? Well, first step is to provide resources. You can create a social media toolkit. And that is certainly not limited to social media platforms. You just want to report out on those, what's available, relevant hashtags, and your key talking points across social media, and how to set up an account if they are just beginning to dip their toes into the social media world. And make patrons the stars. So some of those examples earlier are exactly what I'm talking about. Ask for a testimonial in post-show surveys. And video testimonials have a long lifespan. You could set up a mini review booth in your lobby post-show to capture immediate reactions to share in subsequent emails and social media, or simply take the time to make yourself and your team readily available to thank patrons as they exit your theater and ask what their favorite part of the show was. And this is a really important point. Embrace your perceived competition. Don't be afraid to reach out to your biggest perceived competitor and find opportunities to cross-promote, because truthfully, you never know where the opportunity may lead. It could lead you to a partnership that benefits both organizations, thus creating more loyal brand ambassadors. And a mutually beneficial partnership can go a long way in creating those brand ambassadors that are loyal to your organization for the long haul, not just in the immediate. And create task forces. So divide up into smaller groups of dedicated staff and volunteers to tackle a specific challenge and turn it into an opportunity. And that gets them feeling a part of the larger whole, feeling them engaged and ownership over the goal. And this is a concept that is not so new anymore, but creative placemaking. So essentially, meet your audience where they are. So quite literally, go out into the community to listen and learn about what their interests are and where their needs lie. So again, you want to form authentic relationships to better understand what you can do together that could benefit the community. It shouldn't be about ticket sales, sure, that's short term, but meaningful long-term collaboration can lead to more diverse programming that reflects the community of which you reside. So people want to see their story reflected on stage and in the boardrooms where the big decisions are made. So define success. Monitor your campaigns from conception to completion and check Google Analytics routinely to determine your website traffic referrals and work with your advertising rep, if you have one, to evaluate how your digital advertising campaign is performing. So you may have heard about split or A/B testing in your email marketing efforts. I've always found that a fun exercise is when you test publicity photos in your advertisements versus the show art. So this can be especially helpful. So I just want to take a moment now also, what has worked for you? So what has worked for you to engage your staff, your leadership, your volunteers to create that culture of brand ambassadors? How did you engage them? I can hear the wheels turning.
Okay, so Shauna, rewarding returning customers with a little extra something, a free class, a small piece of art.
I like that.
Lisa has said having a short how-to session at a board meeting, pulling out phones and using some of the hashtags.
That's perfect.
Megan says we send detailed surveys out after every performance to get testimonials and feedback, and then use those testimonials in social media.
That is awesome. Those are great examples. Thank you very much, everyone.
We have one more.
Oh, good.
Virginia Bronze invites people to try out the handbells after our concerts.
Oh, I like that.
And gives us a chance to talk with them.
That's fantastic. Now, does that include the musicians engaging, or do then staff, are they invited as well to join in?
She says Virginia Bronze and oh, sorry.
Sure.
She says yes.
Okay, great. Well, this is a fun exercise. I like this. Okay, good. That's very cool. Thank you. Are there any more?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Excellent. So we're nearing the end, and I just wanted to review several key takeaways. Again, you start from the beginning to develop your audience. You conduct that brand audit to determine what's working well, what can be enhanced, and where you'd like to be. You streamline your integrated marketing and communications efforts with a campaign calendar. Define and locate your audience. And all of the worksheet that I provided, you'll be able to see that that should really help you all focus and align your goals for that. Create your visual brand or refresh it using Canva and additional free tools. And a reminder that repeat customers, so going that extra mile for repeat customers, spend 67% more and have larger transactions through their customer life cycle. Transformative experiences are greater than transactional ones. Be as proactive as possible to be as reactive as possible. And say it with me, audience development is the responsibility of everyone. So finally, now you're ready to take action. So if you can share on social media what's one key takeaway and or action that you can do within the next week, the next month, the next year, please do share that so we can continue the conversation. And I also want to ask, this is an easy one for you to add to the chat box. If you can just share one word about how you're feeling. So this has been a lot of information, I know, in a short period of time, but hopefully once you digest and you are able to sit down with your teams and work on an audience development worksheet, hopefully you'll feel like you're in a little bit more control to expand your audience. So what's one word that would describe how you're feeling right now?
Okay, so we have a question. Can you give more examples of transformative experiences?
Oh, yes, so more examples. I would say it has to do with that creative placemaking that I mentioned earlier, where you're going out into the community, your desired community. So you could, if they're holding a town hall, conducting a town hall, for instance, and you want to go and be a part of the conversation. So you are hearing directly from them. You're not leading the conversation. There's leadership within the community that is actually hosting the event, but you're invited into the community. So you can ask them, what is it that you are looking for that is not being provided arts-wise in the community? Is there somehow that we can help? I'm not actually talking about inviting them, creating the program necessarily that invites them to your facility, because for me, the goal is to keep it within the community, within their community. So there could be, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, when I worked for the city of Chicago for marketing Millennium Park, we worked with Emerald City Theater Company, and they had their own facility where they performed. We did invite them to us so that they could expand their audience. We took care of all of the marketing and promotion for them, but we also produced events and we brought it to their venue as well. So you see, it was a mutually beneficial. You're contributing to their marketing, their limited resources, right? And you're helping spread the word, but you're also inviting them into your world as well. So that's a little bigger picture. And I think some of the things that we talked about with making yourself present, your entire team, your leadership, your board, be at those performances, show that you are supporting the artists and that you're engaging with the community. I love the idea that you invite the artists on stage to get to know the instruments and try out the handbells and all of that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you're breaking that fourth wall.
Okay, and then here are some of the key takeaways.
Great.
Have inspired, informed, hopeful, empowered with some new tools, raring to go. I like that one. Inspiration and confirmation, and inspired.
I like that, in confirmation. Interesting. Good, thank you. Excellent. So we do have some time. I'd love to hear if you have any other questions or what some of the key takeaways that have really resonated with you are. And remember, we're a full group, so if there's anything that you want to share that you think would be helpful, keeping in mind we have representatives from small organizations, medium to large. We have, I know, board members from different organizations that are on the call with us today as well. So what else would you like to share out with the full group?
Okay, from Signature Theater, Emily, thank you so much for this. Would you mind going back to the slide for audience retention with the percentages? I'm also curious where you found those numbers. This was great.
Absolutely, Emily. We're going to go back up here. Harvard Business, there we go. Actually, sorry, I'm going to do this. The Harvard Business School, this was a report from them. Let's go back. I miss my 2 monitors at my desk. Okay, so here we go. Increasing customer retention rates by 5% increases profits. By 25 to 95%, 2% increase in customer retention has the same effect of decreasing your expenses by 10%. And on average, loyal customers are worth up to 10 times as much as their first purchase.
She says, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have Shauna. What is hard for me is deciding to spend money on advertising. I have a really low profit margin at this time, given the amount of time I put into each piece. I know I need to do this, but I'm not sure what is a good way or an amount to start with.
So if you're talking about, it could be print advertising, it could be digital, it could be social media, digital, it could be social media, it could be you're creating a one-sheeter and making sure that it's at all your local coffee shops, etc. So I would recommend that you do a deep dive into available listservs and that are available to you. I'm sure that ArtsFairfax team has some more information on that for you. And there are lots of ways that you can advertise for free outside of, your time. And that's the opportunity cost, certainly. I would say that in my experience, digital advertising has been extremely helpful. Growth has been exponential in increasing ticket sales. Now, that's something that is it can be very costly and not something I would recommend for a smaller, like a small visual arts organization necessarily. What I would suggest is that you make sure that your brand is solid. So you could try Canva, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about that, so that you create those flyers and you can make sure that they are at all those events so that your brand can continue to be recognized. And play around, experiment with Facebook boosted posts. That's very helpful. I've had great success also with sponsored LinkedIn ads. Those can be pretty pricey as well, but Instagram and Facebook are also pretty cost effective.
Okay, we have Shauna says, thank you. Someone else, thank you for your answer. We have the same concern with limited marketing budget.
Print advertising is also very expensive, but again, this is why creating that culture of brand ambassadors who are loyal to you is so important, because that word of mouth is free. You're just spending taking the time to build those relationships up, like I believe Olivia was saying earlier, and that's essential. So the more that you can arm your brand ambassadors with the information, the messaging that you want to convey to the world, the more resources you can give them, the more it's essentially your little army, your little arts army. And they go out into the world and they support you. It's free advertising for you.
Okay. Olivia asks, do you have any advice during COVID-19? With the switch to Zoom and online classes, we're losing business. Also, there are some growing pains for the organization using more advanced technology and social media. Do you have any advice on getting everyone on board and confident with their skills?
That is a really great question. Thank you for asking that. So I would say that in addition to planning ahead and communicating proactively and being transparent about what your organization is trying to achieve during this very difficult time, it is imperative that you remain connected with your audience. So showing empathy is essential. Now is actually not the time to focus on sales. So you want to remind your audience what you can do for them during this unsettling time and provide the resources to help occupy their days. So I would say, as far as trying to align everybody in the organization, this starts at the top. So leadership, and if you're not in a position of leadership, just, make sure that you be confident in trying to have your voice heard. So speak to your manager, and hopefully there are lots of all staff meetings happening. And I'm sure that they're giving people the opportunity to ask questions. So make your voice heard. Don't shy away, and just share what you're experiencing, because in these difficult times, there isn't always an easy answer right in front of you. But the point is to keep connected, not just with each other, and being transparent about what your messaging is, and being vocal about that right away, but it's also keeping connected to your audience. And there are lots of tools to help with technology. I even received one for Zoom last week, I believe, and I'm happy to pass it on to Danielle and the ArtsFairfax team. That might be helpful, but I think that we'll continue to see a lot more use of Zoom, and there are lots of resources within Zoom. There's the whole whiteboard feature. There's the closed groups where you can meet out and have those conversations and then come back together collectively and report out. So it's just going to take some time, and we're all being thrown into this, into the deep end. But again, I would just say continue to show empathy and be transparent with staff and with your audiences.
Okay, a question from Megan from Next Stop Theater. How do you feel about the post-show Pass the Hat speech asking for donations? I feel like audiences are exhausted by them, but they also feel like a necessary evil.
Interesting. So I think a couple of things. I'm thinking of a couple of organizations that I'm actually loyal to myself that do this. And every time it's like you expect that. And it doesn't irk me, because I actually like seeing the having that close interaction with the artist afterwards. So for me, I'm thinking more, yes, you have that speech on stage, but then they're also meeting you at the doors as you exit. So talk about exhausting. They have just given their all on stage. I think it's exhausting for the artists. And the audience is ready to go about their day as well. But now I think what might start to happen is there might be more opportunities where you can share, you can Venmo tips, you can have other opportunities where there are staff in the lobbies who can do those donations, those transactions in real time. So I've done this before at a trade show, where actually we just use Squarespace, and it's right then and there. You're donating on the spot, and you get something in return. So I believe we talked about this earlier. There was a great example. You can get a sticker that says, I support so-and-so. But I think it's important to break that fourth wall, like I mentioned earlier, but I think there are more innovative ways to do that. And especially as we're continuing to move into the digital space with Zoom and other helpful resources, I think there are other ways to decrease the amount of exhaustion and continue the conversation online and elsewhere. So I don't think they're necessarily a detraction from the experience. I think it is a really cool way to see your artist up close and have those interactions. But again, I think they put a lot of themselves out there for you, and there are other ways to engage.
Okay, a question from Barry from Field Management Solutions. I used to be CEO at Celebrate Fairfax. We had a strategy for retention that we created an incentive program with slight discounts for past purchasers if they made their ticket purchase during what we called our super early bird sales period. The idea was that our most likely ticket buyers were our loyal fans. We increased our net revenue through this process significantly and made our fans feel special that they had this opportunity.
I think that is fantastic. And I love that you're saying fans. To me, that's one and the same with a brand ambassador. I think that I'd be curious to know if the super early bird, if that's correct, was during a time that was typically slow, and that you were creative and clever enough to increase the ticket purchasing power, donation power during that slow time. There's actually something that I do where I currently work. It's a day of giving campaign meant to attract new individual donors. And it's actually right in early June when, for us, that's always been more of a slow time when donations from corporate individuals are coming in. So you've got that Giving Tuesday earlier, and then the June for us, it was really key. Now we have increased our donations throughout the year. There's a really awesome momentum. So being able to identify if it's that super early bird, I love that idea. Find those moments that might be a little bit less active in ticket purchasing and donations, and see what you can do to ramp up excitement during those times.
Barry said yes, during a slow period. It gave us cash
Great.
flow at the start of our sales period, well before we normally would have started sales.
Brilliant. Absolutely.
Okay, another question. We are a Chinese dance group and would like to develop new patrons among the general American audience who may not know much about this art form. How do we begin to work on marketing for this? Digital marketing, survey, interviews?
That is great. The first thing that comes to mind is kind of the reverse creative placemaking. So it's making yourself available to your local arts resources. So again, I would think that ArtsFairfax would have resources on this, and I might explore that a little bit on their website. But essentially, testimonials would be really helpful in this as well. So testimonials from your loyal fans, your patrons, to talk about why they keep coming back to your programming would be really helpful. That increases word of mouth. And I don't know what your budget size is, but absolutely explore boosted posts and sponsored ads. That would be really, really helpful. And you can get really targeted in those efforts as well. So experiment with that, again, with a modest budget, and see what the impact has, and just keep expanding off of that.
Great. Lisa said, partner with other arts organizations,
Yes.
including dance, music, and visual arts groups.
That's perfect. So again, when I mentioned partner up with your perceived competitors, that can be a mutually beneficial opportunity for you both. And I'm sure that you would find that you have the same growing pains and external threats that would be really helpful to partner up on, and brainstorm ways about how you can collaboratively work together to expand your audiences.
And that looks like that's it for the questions.
Okay, I'm just going to go forward here. Those are great questions and examples. Thank you. Okay. So thank you very, very much for your time today. The fact that you are all here, you're engaged, and you're prepared to focus on the future for your organization, it really does speak to the heart of the arts community, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me should you have any further questions, and we can certainly continue the conversation on Twitter. And again, just use #ArtsFairfax. And with that, I do want to pass it along to Danielle, I believe.
So thank you, Annalisa, for the wonderful presentation. And I also want to thank everyone for participating. We had some great questions and some great engagement. We plan to share the presentation with you, and we'll also be sharing the worksheet. I'm going to copy and paste a link. We have an evaluation form that I'll also be emailing out to everyone. So you should see it in the chat. And if you can just take a few minutes to complete that, that would be great. Our next workshop will cover branding and digital marketing on May 1st, and we will have details for registration soon. Finally, I would like to introduce our Director of Advocacy and Public Information, Dana Stewart, for some closing remarks.
Hi, everyone. That was a great presentation. I'm so glad you had the opportunity to hear it. I won't take up too much of your time, but I wanted to tell you that ArtsFairfax has created a COVID-19 page with a list of resources that may help you if you're struggling financially, you're looking for additional grant money. Please, I put the link into the chat box. Please go to that page and see if there's anything that could assist you during this time. Also, if you know of some resources that that is not on the page, I would love to hear from you so that I can share that with our community. The best way to reach me is dstewart@artsfairfax.org. If you'll just send me that information, and I'll go ahead and pop it up on the website. Finally, the last thing I want to ask of you is, you know, ArtsFairfax advocates for funding for the arts community via our grants. This year, the county will not be having a publicly attended where you actually physically go and attend the hearing, but they are continuing with the budget process, and we need your help. We want to communicate to our elected officials that the arts are a vital part of our community. And to do that, we are making a video, you can see on your screen, about the people in the arts. So we want to hear from you. Like, I don't want your official job title. You'll see me on there. I do marketing. I want to hear from you about your job if you're being impacted by what is going on in the community right now. I have put up another link, and that will take you to a web page. The first part of the page gives you an example of how you can contact your local elected official and tell your story. The second part of the page contains the link that will take you directly to the website so you can upload your photo and help us create this video. We think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a piece of art. You're going to be a part of it. And we hope you take the time to visit this site and read a little bit about it and participate. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Dana. And thank you again, everyone, for your participation. Any other closing remarks, Annalisa?
None from me. Thank you so much, everybody. That was really insightful information that you had. So thank you. And thanks for the opportunity, Team Arts Fairfax.
Great. Okay. Bye, everyone.